Following the Egypt presidential election victory of Army General Abdul Fatah Al-Sisi, let's see what the press is saying about the potential for a new Egypt. An article in our Monitor by Tom Rollins asks if Sisi will now deliver on his election promises to the poor. The article says statements by the president-elect himself suggest ordinary Egyptians, and particularly citizens living below the poverty line, could be about to face hard times. The article says Sisi's support from poor and low-income Egyptians, people the president-elect has often appealed to or aimed his rhetoric at during months of unrest, hardship and campaigning, may be less absolute. Reuters reported this week that Sisi's tough love message may have alienated voters and one-time supporters in working-class areas. But what about those who do not work, people living well below the poverty line, he asks. Sisi was quoted as saying Egyptians deserve to lead a life of dignity, security and freedom. They deserve to have a job, food, education, medical treatment and affordable homes. However, a series of statements, interviews and leaks suggest austerity and harsh economics could define Egypt's immediate future. The article adds shortly after announcing his presidential bid in late March, Sisi announced a $40 billion social housing deal with Emirati construction giant Arab Tech to provide hundreds of social housing units around Cairo, but many are saying it's not enough. Ahmed Mahir writes an opinion piece in the Washington Post titled "What Really Happened to Egypt's Revolution?" Mahir is currently held in Egypt's Torah prison for founding the April 6th youth movement. He criticises John Kerry's statements about the Egyptian revolution, saying, "We agree with you that the Brotherhood ruled Egypt ineffectively with stupidity, stubbornness and greed. No one disagrees with that. Many of those youths who rebelled against the Mubarak government in 2011 also protested the incompetence of the Brotherhood on June the 30th, 2013. But now they wallow in prisons and are being attacked every day in the Egyptian media." He writes, Egypt is ruled by a military regime that does not tolerate criticism or even advice. It's not merely content to pass a law to ban protests, under which I have been sentenced to spend 3 years in prison and pay a fine of 50,000 Egyptian pounds. He adds, when anyone speaks about the wrong direction the country is taking, or the violations of human rights, or the oppression that is increasing every day, the consequences are death or imprisonment, or at the very least, the tarnishing of one's reputation in the media. He concludes the Egyptian authorities must respect freedoms, human rights, freedom of expression, dialogue and inclusion, and must not encourage others to resort to extremism and violence. If your Apache helicopters are important in the fight against terrorism, I assure you that individual freedoms, democracy, respect for human rights, dialogue and inclusion are also important in the fight against terrorism. We're now joined by activist Iman Bibars, also MENA Director of Ashoka World. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Bibars.
Thank you.
So my first question is, regarding Sisi's victory in the presidential election, many observers, especially in the West, have said that while the results of the election are debatable, now Egypt must focus on solving some of its long-running social crises. What potential is there now to move forward with real policies that address the economic woes of ordinary Egyptians?
I would like to address a couple of issues. Number one, I'm not sure why is the results debatable. I mean, there were many observers. Our organization was one of the observers as well. Even the EU report, which has other criticisms relevant to the actual process, nobody has witnessed or reported on rigging or on people being pushed or on people being paid to go, or the things even that the Muslim Brothers did, which were not done. People went in to vote for him because they wanted to vote. So it was much more efficiency within the polls themselves, and maybe a lack of depending by the government on the holidays and whatever. But there was no one, not a single person who was pushed or forced or asked to go and who didn't want to go and vote freely for Sisi. And I really would advise everybody to go down to the squatter areas and poor areas and rural areas of Upper Egypt to see how the majority of the Egyptians in these areas are pro-Sisi because they see him as a hope for the future. So I'm not sure where the Western media is getting their information, because we are there, and I said none of the behavior or the things that used to be done in any election before has been done this time. People went from their own accord. The social challenges, I think Sisi is going to face a lot of challenges. I think there are many problems in Egypt. There are economic problems, there are political problems, and there are also social problems. And I think it's a huge problem and many challenges because, as you were saying, when you were speaking a while ago, many people expect things to be done quickly. So a lot of people will expect, I'm having some problems with my finance, or I'm unemployed, maybe I'll find a job tomorrow. So I think there will be some problems with that issue. I agree there will be many challenges.
And Sisi is the latest in a long line of military leaders in Egypt. What does military rule mean for the country, do you think?
Well, again, there are a couple of things here. I mean, it is very important when we address country, we address also the context of the country. He is no longer a military. He resigned from the military. He will have the support of the military, it's true, but he is not a military man. And if we read from the history in other countries, there were many people with the background of military, but that doesn't mean that the military is ruling. So I also do not, I mean, the premise is a little bit surprising because we have to judge people by their actions and behavior, not put labels on people without knowing. I think
are you with us, Iman? The line just went blank.
And the Egyptian people and their army have very different relationship than what the Western media is portraying. A single family does not have a relevance in the army. The army is the people. So
we'll have to end the interview there due to a bad line. Thank you, Dr. Bibas, very much for joining us to discuss the Egyptian elections. And for more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.